Welcome back to Under 450k. This is the channel where we review regional suburbs or suburbs in general, and I give you my insights, my thoughts, and my due diligence on these suburbs. And the suburb that we have today is regional Albany. Now, if you have missed out on Townsville, if you've missed out on Perth, this may be the next hotspot location for you. And make sure you watch through the entirety of the video to completely understand my entire breakdown. And if you have any questions or concerns or disputes or disagreements, please leave it down in the comments below. But before we go into the breakdown of Albany's region and the suburbs that we should be thinking about investing in, I want you to go and subscribe to my newsletter where I will talk about suburbs specifically within regional locations every single week. I give you my thoughts, my opinions. This is where you should be going to get the most up-to-date information, not my YouTube, my newsletter. And if you also want more in detail questions and answers, I have a private community. It is with a couple of investors. It's a very small community. I've just literally started it, and go and join it if you would like to get answers to more specific questions that meet your needs. And so the reason that you've come to this video is because there is another major hotspot location within regional Perth. And for some reason, no one's really talking about it, even though it's quite a hot market. Buyers agents on YouTube videos aren't talking about it. A lot of the Facebook groups aren't really talking about it, but I would like to give my 2 cents on it. I'm going to give you the facts, the figures, and my due diligence and my reasoning behind the reason why I think it might be a good hotspot location for people to go invest in, and then you can go in and make your decisions about it. And the place and the region that I'm talking about is Albany. And to put it straight out there, the specific suburbs which I'm talking about within Albany include Orana, Lockyer, and Spencer Park. Those three locations are quite hot at this very point in time. Not only is the data metrics showing it, I've also talked to local agents on the ground and they have confirmed it. And that's how I do my due diligence, by the way. It's not just me looking at numbers and facts and figures. I go in and talk to specific agents, which include sales agents and property managers, and really understand what's going on in the market there and what's driving such a hot market. And I want to get into everything. And so the way I like to do these videos is I'm going to start through and look at the data metrics of the two specific suburbs that I'm talking about, which is Orana and Spencer Park. Now, I mentioned in every single video, Boom Score is free. That's why I'm showing it on my YouTube video. But I use paid sources like DSR and HTag, and I like to use both of them to actually cross-reference it. Obviously, it's a lot of money, so people should decide whichever one they want. I think DSR personally is easier to read, and for those who are like a little bit more in detail metrics, HTag is better. Again, I'm not sponsored by any of them, just to be very clear. So let me just look at Orana Park, and you can see the days on market. It's actually trending down since 2023 of June, from 45 days down to 28 days. And that's a very, very hot market. So that's basically telling us that properties are selling within the month. Even stock on market, it has been reducing for the past couple of months. Now, there's a small trend up, but it's actually on DSI, it's just about flat and downward trend. Now, these two in combination tell us and reflect us that it is a heating up market and it is a very hot market. And some properties are actually selling within days and sometimes within 24 to 48 hours. And there are people and buyers agents out there buying properties in these locations sight unseen, right? So they don't even look at the property, they just snap it up at the right price. The gross rental yield is about 6.2%. I find it's a bit lower. It's around the 5.5 to 6%, but it's still an incredibly good yield to go in and buy. Vendor discounting is minus 5%. I can attest to that. I've talked to agents on the ground and they're getting properties, $10,000 to $20,000 more than what they listed it for. Also, vacancy rates in Orana Park are extremely low. It's about 0.2%. And I also want to go in bit more detail about this postcode 6330. And if we have a look at the asking sale price of the region, we can actually look at the all houses and the houses, right? So the market's risen about 15%, about 10% for 3-bedroom houses, which is understandable. And when we look at the 3-year average, it's risen about 30%, right? People who invest in Townsville now are investing in locations where it's risen by 50 or 60% minimum, right? And so when you have a suburb like this where it's only gone up by 30% or just under 30%, that's very good. And the other amazing metric we want to look at is the 10-year average and the 7-year average. So on average, property actually goes up by 7% each year. And so when we see both the 10-year average and the 7-year average well below the 7% mark, that gives us confidence that there is a room for the properties to grow in prices, right? And that's one metric. Now, there's another metric as well, which is median incomes, and I'll get into that in a second. So this gives us confidence that, and this trend and this upwards trend, both gives us confidence that the market is moving in the right direction, that it's heating up, and that it's becoming a hot market. And we might not see suburb prices very low for long. And so I want to go through what an ideal investment what looks like in Orana Park, right? So Orana Park, 5 Seville Way, this is what a perfect investment looks like, right? You got a brick and tile home, 3-bedroom. Maybe if you want 4-bedroom, you can go for a 4-bedroom, but a 3-bedroom, pretty good quality, in a great location. This one is going for $470,000, but I think in about 3 to 6 months that could be well over $500,000, and that's a great return on investment. And of course, people are just selling above this price. I would expect this one to go for about 480 or 490. We'll have to see when it comes as in the sold section, right? But this is what an ideal investment looks like in Orano. There's not too many properties available to rent, right? Available to be sold. So it's already a very hot market. And when I contacted agents on the ground, and when I talked to the agents on the ground, they all said the same thing. Properties are selling within a couple of days of being listed, whether it's owner occupier, whether it's an investor, whether it's a first home buyer. These properties are being snatched up because of its great value and its great price tag on it. And I'll go more in detail about the areas as well, right, a bit later in the video. But I want to talk to Albany as a region and why it's so good, in my opinion. Now, first caveat is I want to say, right, if you are not if you don't have a bit of a risk appetite and you can only stick to capital cities, this video is not for you, right? This regional city is only 40,000 in population. Compare that to Townsville or Albury Wodonga. You're getting 100,000 population, even in Bendigo, a good, decent population, while this is only 40,000. Now, does that make it a bad investment decision? I think not. I think it has a great economy, a great diverse economy, and a good growing population. And I'm going to break this down for you, right? So Albany, a 40,000 population, and when we go through to its population estimates, so if we just go through here, population estimates, we can actually see that it has been growing. Let's put this 2023, 2021. Yeah, awesome. We can actually see it's been growing at around 1% almost every year. So it's a growing population. More people are moving to Albany. And if you look up just some simple Google research, you can see that internal migration is very high into the region of Albany. The reasons why is because it's affordable, it's a great town, great local tourism, great beaches, great economy, plenty of jobs out there, and it's a very laid back lifestyle. And if you're wondering how I found out about this, one Google search, and I also talked to people in the area. And that's what you have to do for due diligence and research, right? So that's in terms of the population. And we can go deeper into it and understand its economy, right? Its economy is agriculture, construction, professional services, healthcare, retail trade. Healthcare is quite big in Albany. But it's not only good to look at the number of businesses, because there's also a bit of mining here. And you might consider this a red flag. I don't think it really is. And I'll go into a bit more detail. So we can see already here, it's a very, very diverse economy. Even though it's only a 40,000 population, it's still a very diverse economy. And when we look at the exports, or sort of what the Albany produces, right, in terms of exports, we can see agriculture is one of its strongest at 588 million. We look at that further, agriculture 306, forestry logging 157, etc. But what we can see here is that mining produces quite a lot of its economy as well. It produces about 120 million. So it's third biggest industry in terms of exports, right? But it's still not a big red flag because you've got other industries within the area, and you can see from just this alone that it's a very diverse economy, retail trade, accommodation, education and trading, and healthcare as well. It is very, very diverse. So, for those of you who think Albany is a mining town or you think any regional suburb in Perth is a mining town, then you've got it completely wrong. Are there mining towns in Perth? Absolutely. I mean, Kalgoorlie is a number one. I don't know why people still invest there, but each to their own. And you can even confirm sort of what the agriculture is. I think it's changed a bit since 2020. But one of the biggest things they do is like Albany Grain Terminal, CBH. You can see that it's a very, very diverse economy, even though it's a very small location. It's 40,000, right? So the people who are scared about investing in regional locations like Townsville, they might be very scared to invest in Albany, and that's completely fine. Other people will possibly reap the rewards of what you've missed out on. And I think it's, again, buying markets within markets. And the reason I say that is because there are good suburbs and bad suburbs in Albany. And I want to get into all the specifics of that. But to give you a little break, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please subscribe, right? If you haven't subscribed to my newsletter, please subscribe. If you want more in detail answers, then go to my private paid Discord community and go and subscribe there as well. Right. One thing I will say is I will never gatekeep suburbs. I am not a buyer's agent. I don't get anything out of holding these suburbs or hiding these suburbs away from you. I want to be transparent and I want to clean up the real estate industry a little bit, so to speak, and give my thoughts and opinions out there. And then you guys can take that and do what you want with it. Right. But I'll never gatekeep. And I don't know why people don't talk about Albany more, because I know for a fact there are several buyers agents within this area buying up property for their clients. But they don't talk about it in their YouTube videos. And you might ask why? Because they don't want the extra competition. Also, another piece of advice for investors out there: if a buyer's agent isn't talking about a certain suburb, it may not be because they don't want to invest in that suburb. It may be because they're currently investing in that suburb, so that in 12 months' time, they can be like, oh, we were investing that 12 months ago. You should have been with us for that to happen. My ideal number one location to invest in Albany is going to be Orana. Now, Orana has plenty of great opportunities. Is it hard to come by? Absolutely. Properties are being sold within a couple of days of it coming online. What I will say is you're going to have to find off-market opportunities, call the agents within the area, and see if they have any opportunities coming out. You can get a great brick and tile home on a big piece of land, about 500 or 700 square meters of land, for under 500,000 at the time of this recording, at the release of this video. Right, so that provides great opportunities with rental returns of up to about $500 per week. Is there locations of developable land? Absolutely. All of this is earmarked and zoned for developable land in the future. This is a park, obviously, but there are plenty of places for it to be developed into extra housing for people. But let me tell you one thing. With Albany, because it's such a remote regional location and construction is a very small sector of Albany, and the fact that labor is very expensive these days, it's taking a lot longer for properties and supply to be developed in the area. So even though they have locations like this place and this place earmarked for housing in the future, we don't know when that supply is going to come. And for one thing is for certain, it's not going to come within the next 2 years. That's for sure. There are barely any building approvals within Albany itself. So hopefully that gives you a bit of confidence. If you're looking for that short-term equity gain, Orana, great location. Same thing with Spencer Park. This place, it's getting a bit harder to find under 500,000 or under 450,000. There are still some opportunities, but maybe an older style home before the 1990s. Take that as you will. And there's great opportunities here as well. With Lockyer, there's a lot of investor activity happening here. I would have this as my last resort location if I didn't have Orana or Spencer Park. So take that, think about that. A lot of developable land again. You can even see some of the newer housing. Very, very small pieces of land built with large homes. So land to asset ratio is terrible. All of this, imagine this. This is all new houses, probably like 10, 20 houses there. Housing, etc. So Lockyer, a lot of investor activity. It's about 45%, I think, investor activity going on there. So stick to Orano, stick to Spencer Park. Yakamaya, again, a good area, but the higher median price of around $600,000. So if you have that budget, then go for it. Stay away from Warren, not a great area. Now with McHale, some of you might be tempted to go to McHale. please don't. It's not a good location. And the reason I say that is because it's a new location. It's where all the new housing developments is being built up. Properties are being sold for $600,000 on small pieces of land. Rental returns are good, but it's not good for capital growth, right? Um, so you can see all of this is all new housing supply, all new housing supply. You can just simply tell through satellite imagery. If a house is built on small pieces of land and the home is large, it's going to be a new home. And you can see all of this. You can see some of these. And usually in Orana Park, you'll find properties with a shed. A shed will give you higher rental returns as well. So a little tip there for you. So again, avoid McHale, stick to Orano, stick to Spencer Park, stick to Yakamaya if you can. So that should give you a good idea of what suburbs to specifically target within Albany and where to buy within Albany. I did do some initial research on Lower King and Bayonet Head, but you'd want to stick to the metropolitan areas of Albany, considering such a small town. I mean, is it me or does the beach look just lovely on the satellite imagery? It just does. One of the things I did want to talk about as well is public housing within Albany. Public housing within Albany is very, very spread out, right? It's in all parts of Albany. And it used to be sort of all in Spencer Park, but some of them got decommissioned and they got moved on. But places in Orana, Lockyer have pockets of public housing. So if you find a house you like, call your property manager or call the property manager if you want to look after the property and ask them, is there public housing near this street? If there is, you may need to rethink your decision. But at the same time, there's public housing sort of all over Spencer Park. So when it's sporadically all throughout, it still might be worth buying the house, as long as it's not right next door, of course. That might cause a problem. Right. The other main thing I wanted to talk about Albany was median incomes. And the reason incomes are so important is the fact that house prices can only go so up to the point where people who live in that area can no longer afford it. So right now, at this point in time, the income to mortgage ratio is about 30% or just below 30%. Now, that gives a little bit of room for capital prices to grow. But as soon as the house prices come to the point of 550,000 to 600,000, that's where people might start to be tapping out, and the point where they can no longer afford property within these areas, within Orana Park specifically. Because when this sort of comes to 600,000, then you might start looking at people who want to live in McHale, for example, where the properties are 700,000. So the incomes really need to match sort of the house prices as well, even if there is a supply and demand issue. The other really main point that I want to talk about, why I think Albany is, or sort of Orana Park and Spencer Park and Yakamaya is a good area, is because it's surrounded by places like Mount Melville, Albany, Collington Heights, Middleton Beach. All these areas are, properties with 700,000, 800,000, and sometimes $1 million properties within a regional area of a 40,000 population. I mean, that gives plenty of room for places like Orana to grow, and Yakamaya to grow, and Spencer Park to grow. And I think, and now I feel like I'm bringing Albany to its mainstream media, and I think within 6 months to 12 months, a lot more people will be talking about this area, and it'll come to so hot to the point where people can't buy property. There's just gonna be no stock, pretty much. So hopefully that gives you a good insight into Albany and makes you rethink about, if those people who are looking at Townsville could no longer afford Townsville, they might need to look at places like Albany. And so I hope that really helps.